pop culture gets a lot wrong about fascism, especially how it looks and how it sells itself. You see it everywhere. The classic depiction of fascists or authoritarian governments as this cold, soulless machine of conformity, the gray suits, the sterile military uniforms, the robotic salute. It's all very 1984, very Empire from Star Wars, very lawful evil. They're the elite, the system, the man and the heroes, always the scrappy rebels, punks, hackers, rogue journalists battling the giant boot stamping on a human face forever. It's a powerful visual, but it's also deeply misleading. Fascists never sold themselves as the man. They hated the man, or at least they wanted you to think they did. They weren't the clean-cut technocrats promising tidy order. They were the angry outsiders promising to smash everything that held you back. They didn't gain power by worshiping the rule of law. They spat on it. Fascism at its core is about righteous violence. It is about replacing rules with loyalty. It glorifies action over process, obedience to a person over obedience to a system. That kind of ideology doesn't attract lawyers and bureaucrats. It attracts street fighters, criminals, and people who want to win more than they want to be right. Let's talk examples. Benito Mussolini wasn't some disciplined military mind. He was a street thug, a school-expelled, knife-wielding, serially violent delinquent. He romanticized this image in his own memoirs, bragging about his criminal record like it made him more legitimate. And it did. He used that bad boy image to recruit exactly the kind of people he needed for his black shirt paramilitary squads, gangsters, brawlers, mafia goons. These weren't civil servants in waiting. They were guys who knew how to beat people unconscious in alleys. And Mussolini didn't hide this. When opposition leader Giacomo Matteotti criticized him, Mussolini's goons literally stabbed him to death and dumped his body. When asked if he was behind it, his attitude was basically, yeah, so what? This wasn't a bug. It was the point. Same story with Hitler and the Nazis. The early SA, Sturmabteilung, were basically gangs of violent ex-soldiers who spent most of their time brawling with communists in the streets. Dueling scars were badges of honor. Horst Wessel, Nazi martyr, was a pimp. Even other Germans were horrified. One law professor begged his former student, Hans Frank, to stay away, saying, political movements that begin in the criminal courts will end in the criminal courts. They weren't the rule of law. They were the end of the rule of law. This dynamic is still alive and well. Putin's Russia operates on the same principle. His inner circle, career criminals, gangsters, fraudsters. Prigozhin was a street thug who mugged old ladies. Abramovich did time for embezzlement. Shoigu's palatial wealth doesn't remotely match his public salary. These are men who flaunt lawlessness as power. They serve the leader not because of shared ideals, but because loyalty is rewarded and disobedience gets you jailed, poisoned, or pushed out a window. This is why Putin rails against international law, not because it's unfair, but because its existence challenges his entire mode of rule. In his world, law is weakness. What matters is personal will. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, they had trouble finding normal recruits for their proxy militias, so they turned to a pool they knew would work: criminals, street gangs, prison recruits, biker gangs, people who understood the logic of doing whatever you want as long as it serves the boss. And this logic isn't even exclusive to fascists. Stalin was a literal gangster. Ceausescu, same. Plenty of leftist insurgencies operated like cartels. What matters isn't the ideology, it's the disregard for institutional constraint. And oddly, fiction tends to make these guys sympathetic. If they wear a red star or rage against capitalism, suddenly the audience is supposed to root for them, even if they're murdering civilians and trafficking women. So what's the harm in these misrepresentations? If fascists look like the establishment in fiction, people will assume that anyone not in a suit, anyone rowdy or rebellious, must be against fascism. That's dangerous, because in reality the next fascist is more likely to be some grinning tough guy with a rap sheet and a loyal following, someone who talks like a gangster and acts like a YouTube alpha male. He won't promise order, he'll promise revenge. That's who fascism actually appeals to. People who want permission to hurt others in the name of justice, not actual justice, but whatever serves their grievance. People who hate the idea of rules because they've never seen rules help them. So no, fascists aren't tidy little pencil pushers. They're not emotionless bureaucrats in pressed uniforms. They're charismatic criminals, thugs, rogues, rebels who sell destruction as salvation. In short, Tony Soprano is a way more realistic fascist archetype than any imperial officer in Star Wars. and those two thugs in A Clockwork Orange becoming government enforcers, that was probably the most honest moment in dystopian fiction. This video was inspired by this user. Please support the original poster. Consider liking and subscribing for more fictional opinions, hot takes. Thank you for watching.